When I moved house, the landlord gave me one warning. Never open the door at the end of the hall. At first, I brushed it off as a quirky rule, some old superstition tied to the house's long history. The door, painted an unremarkable gray, looked as ordinary as any other. There was no lock, no barricade, just a doorknob that seemed almost too eager for someone to twist it. The first few nights were quiet. The house creaked as old houses do, settling into a rhythm of low groans and sporadic pops. But on the fourth night I heard it. A faint knock. It was soft, almost hesitant, like someone testing the boundaries of sound. I froze, staring at the gray door at the end of the hallway. My rational mind argued that it must have been the wind, or maybe an animal outside. But there was no wind that night. The knocking came again the next night. This time it was louder, more insistent. I pressed my ear to the door, holding my breath. On the other side, I heard something faint, but unmistakable. Breathing. I should have left then, packed up my things, and never looked back. But I was curious. Curiosity that felt less like my own, and more like something the house itself had planted in me. On the sixth night, I snapped. The knocking started at 3:33 a.m., a rhythmic pounding that reverberated down the hallway. I grabbed my phone, switched on the flashlight, and marched to the door. "Who's there?" I demanded. No response. Just the sound of that steady, too human breathing. My fingers hovered over the doorknob, my pulse hammering in my ears. I twisted it. The door swung inward. For a moment, there was nothing. Just darkness, thick and impenetrable. Then I saw them. Eyes. Hundreds of them, staring back at me, unblinking and glistening like wet marbles. A hand shot out. A hand that wasn't a hand at all. Its fingers were elongated, jointed in ways that defied anatomy, ending in jagged claws. It grabbed my wrist, its grip cold and wet, like raw meat. I screamed and pulled back, slamming the door shut. The knocking stopped immediately, leaving an oppressive silence that felt even worse. My wrist throbbed where the thing had touched me, a bruise already forming in the shape of its claws. The next morning, the landlord came by to collect rent. He noticed the mark on my wrist, impaled. Without a word, he handed me a set of nails and a hammer. "Seal it," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Seal it, and never go near it again." I nailed the door shut, but it doesn't matter. The knocking hasn't stopped. It's been 2 weeks now, and every night at 3:33 a.m., I hear it. Louder, closer. I'm starting to think the door wasn't meant to keep me out. It was meant to keep them in.